Welcome to Gold and Black Live, our October 7th edition. Coach Matt Painter joining us, and we'll get to him in a minute. I want to thank Triple X on the hill, but on the level of Purdue tradition since 1929. State Farm agent Trent Johnson. Trent is myagent.com. Coach, first, thank you for taking the time to join us. Basketball practices ongoing almost the entire year, but officially since the last week of September. Just give us a little insight into from the get-go of how things are going and what you like about your team so far.
Yeah, it's obviously a young team. We had 4 guys that didn't go this summer, and so I think that was something that kind of held us back in terms of kind of meshing together at that time, and just trying our best here in the fall as we had some practices and then official practice starting. It's really no different. You have a choice what you want to do with the 4 hours before official practice started last week. So we do practice before then. So when they make a big deal about the first day, when it actually isn't the first day, it's just kind of the first official day. So we've been doing things and everybody's been working. All of our guys are 100%. I wouldn't call Brian Waddell 100%, even though he does everything now. He's still, his injury was just more severe and takes a little bit longer in terms of once you get cleared, now going through that process of just having that trust. But he is making improvements and he's looking better, week to week. Cam Heide, Caleb First, and Braden Smith were the other 3. And all 3 of them have had really good visits back to the doctor that, everything is positive and going in the right direction. So since we've started here in the fall, like our guys, they've worked hard. We have to have an identity of being, a sharp defensive team and an offensive team that doesn't turn the basketball over. I think those are always pillars of success. You can talk a lot of semantics through different things of the game, but those things are pretty important to be able to execute and take care of the basketball and know where the ball needs to go. So, we put a lot of time into that. We put a lot of time into defense. And I think as things get broken down last year, our number one issue was our inability to do our job. And what I mean by that is just, any coach in any sport, you have rules that you have to stick to, and then there's reads, there's some fluctuation to some different things. I guess you could call it gray area. We broke down in black and white type things, and when we did offensively, it normally ended in a bad shot or a turnover, and then that didn't help us with our issues in transition defense. We were not a very good transition defensive team, even though we put a lot of time into it. And so like that for us is just, I think you guys always relate back to the most previous team because you have people on both teams that you can relate to. So I don't think that's going to be an issue for us in terms of just simply doing our job. I think the overly talented individuals that you've had, I think their attention to detail is not as great, even though you can examples of really talented guys that their attention to detail is great. That for us, was really hard. I mean, anytime we turned it over and got in transition too much, it was going to be a dogfight. It didn't mean we were going to lose. But when we didn't turn the ball over, we won. That's, there was very rarely did that happen where we took care of the basketball and we lost that game. So, I liked our pieces. I liked our complement of each other. We just had to be better in that area, and we simply weren't. And I think this year will be a lot better in that area. We got to be better together. I think we're not going to maybe have a piece or two or have a dynamic guard like Jaden was, but we can be better together and execute better, turn the ball over fewer times, and then be able to really stay connected on the defensive end by doing our job and really focusing right now on communication. I think we have a lot of guys that have a passion for the game. I think we have a lot of guys that really want to win, but we don't have a lot of guys that help each other because they're simply quiet. Your personality as an individual can't be your competitive personality. You have to have that fight to you while you communicate and tie things together and help your teammates. So that's a work in progress for us. And that's something, we got to stay on as a staff.
Matt, when you talk about having to be better together and, obviously you want to be more connected on defense, as you always say, but you got 5 new guys and you didn't have your whole team all summer. Is there a challenge there? Is it a situation where it kind of has to be a double time sort of situation in preseason practice here to get caught up from a camaraderie perspective, from a chemistry perspective?
I don't, just, you take what's in front of you and what you can, what you control, and we can't control that, but we can control our building blocks. And as we start, and build our defensive foundation, and then when things are not, where they need to be, you can't advance. You got to be able to be fundamentally sound and stay with some things. Also have to have a feel for who knows what, and you're going to put a team out there. Your puzzle's always kind of changing. So you're going to put a team out there that you have to understand, does that individual understand his strengths on both ends of the court? Sometimes guys understand that right away. Sometimes guys will never understand that. So just the dynamic of who's with who and who kind of understands to play to their strengths and stay away from their weaknesses. I think being connected for us,
excuse me,
you're fine, is going to really work. I really like the makeup of our team. I think we have guys that want to learn, they want to get better. Just driving the attention to really being detail oriented and being process oriented and making sure guys understand that, like, just, hey, everybody wants to win, but do you have the discipline, through the process to do the little things consistently and have that mental toughness to help us win basketball games?
Do you, when you coach all kinds of different teams that came in with maybe more talent than this one, do you like at where you are in your career that building blocks? Is it more fun or interesting to you to have to take a team and really develop them, or would you really rather have a loaded team and work your way from there? I mean, is there an easy definitive thing?
Yeah, I would rather develop teams and people that have more talent normally have less production when they're piecing it together from a free agent style of a pickup, because that's all this is with the transfer portal. It's free agency.
Yeah.
Not confuse ourselves, but we've all seen that at a professional level where they add those really, talented pieces, and then they don't play as well, because, those individual pieces don't, equal up to that whole, and they're not as good. They're not as good together. Like, hey, well, what happened? Well, nothing happened. They haven't been together very long, and they're really talented. And now you got to have role definition. And that's something that I've really fought guys on in terms of role definition. You got guys that want to be on the front of the media guide, and they're, fortunate to be in the media guide, and I want everybody to go towards that. But when you get to a season, and this is where you are, you got to be able to accept that role to help your team, win the game. And I really, people think that as a coach, you choose that, and you don't. You watch, you evaluate, and then you just let things organically kind of just roll, as you spend the first 2 months of the season before you get to games. And it's actually pretty simple. There's sometimes you're splitting hairs a little bit, like who to start or who's the first guy off the bench. But for the most part, it gets answered, for itself. Sometimes the 5 best guys aren't going to start. You want to have, good rotations. You want to have guys playing together. Then sometimes you'll have a couple guys that are oil and water together, and really trying to keep them away from each other, because you've got into competitive drills, you've scrimmaged, you've done a lot of things. You look at things from previous years. They just simply weren't good together. And if that keeps popping up, there's something there, obviously. So you just kind of pay attention to that and then just kind of grow from there. But the development is the key. And that's why we've had success that we've had, is that because I think our guys get better, but we also take guys that have a real passion for the game. Nobody is going to sit on the phone in recruiting and say, hey man, do you really love the game? And they're going to say, like, let's just be, but you can go out and find, like when I pick up the phone and I call you and you're constantly at the mall, or you're constantly at your girls, or you're constantly doing something besides playing basketball, you might not be our guy. It doesn't mean that you're not a good player, you don't have a lot of talent, but if this is your passion and you put a lot of time into it before you get here, you're going to put a lot of time into it when you get here because it means more to you. And those guys sometimes, get looked over in the recruiting process because that's a tough thing to evaluate how much a guy loves it. But that is our job to get those things figured out. And I think our staff has done a really good job, and I like our pieces in that capacity.
Matt, you mentioned the cover of the media guide. I'm not sure they print media guides anymore because paper's obsolete now. But if they did,
there you go.
Ross-Ade would be on the cover of it. God, that was a hell of a transition to a question. What more can Zach give you this year in the role he's going to play for you now, being kind of your foundation?
Well, being better in other areas of the game, like being a better communicator, being a better defender, just helping his teammates and communicate. Zach kind of does his job and does it well and kind of keeps to himself at times. And last year, he did a much better job in communicating with those things that I talked about, just improving on all those little things, ball screen defense, changing ends, communicating on defense, communicating on offense, being a good teammate, those type of things. That's what, leadership. Sometimes guys aren't completely comfortable leading, especially from, talking all the time. But when you're as, good a player as he is, you can lead by example. And, that's what we need from him. He's going to get a lot of attention. His passing's improved. It's not something that, I would say is great, but I would say it's good. And, he just needs to keep, working in those areas and keep demanding the basketball and being tough on the offensive end and then hit the glass on both ends and, run the court. And, but we expect big things from him. I think he's going to have a super year.
David Jenkins Jr. was a guy that I'm using as an example of a guy that was in a very established program, had success. He comes into your program and into your culture. When you look at the portal, which is always going to be a part of, going to be at least in the mix, you would think for years to come. How important is that being able to make that transfer and be able to be the right type of person in your program, and how has he worked in from that standpoint?
Yeah, well, David's done a good job. He's got a great attitude, great personality. He's been in 3 different programs. This is his 4th program. He's been around good coaches. He knows what's going on, and now just trying to kind of learn a little bit of the differences of what we do, kind of the vernacular things of that nature. But his numbers speak for themselves. He's been able to score the basketball, and I think he'll be kind of that hybrid combo guard where he can play some point for us and get us into offense, but also, be able to shoot the basketball and then just, kind of find his way, from there. And, you want guys to play to their strengths, but we also have a need, at that position too. And, just trying to kind of find that happy medium for us. But he's been great. He's worked very hard. He's really meshed well with our guys. And like I said, he has a great personality and gets along with people, and a competitive guy. So we need his experience. There's no question about that. We need anybody that's, been like Zach or Ethan or Mason or Brandon. Like, we need their experience. We need those guys, especially when it doesn't go their way, to really be good leaders for us.
You have very different dynamics in your front court this year. How much of your focus this preseason is on, I guess, kind of examining how to best use, Caleb and Trey, but also who best complements Zach?
Right. Well, I think it's, you have a lot of options. You have 3 guys that can play the 4. You have 3 guys that can play the 5. And so with Trey and Caleb both being 4-5, I always thought, Trey really kind of changed my mind. And I thought he could be kind of that 3-4 just because his offense got, so much better at the end in high school. Like, he was able to really do a lot of different things. And then he's gotten so big to where, like, now, like, I feel comfortable with him as a 4 or 5 and being able to play that. And Caleb's, even though he didn't play all summer, he lifted and he's gotten a lot stronger and he's worked on his shooting. It's kind of a shock when Caleb first takes a 3 and misses it. He's really shot the ball well here. And you can see there's a lot of confidence there, but he's got a pretty stroke. So Mason obviously has done a lot of little things for us. He's played hard. He's a great offensive rebounder, really stretches the defense. He gives you kind of that perfect balance because he moves so well. And then he, his ability to guard smaller people, I think helps his cause also. But we can have a lot of matchups with those three guys at the center with Mason, or those three guys at the four with Zach. But then we can put together and go with Caleb and Trey together, or, Caleb or Trey with Mason. So I think we have the best front court from a four guys in the country. I think people might be able to argue with us in terms of like who they start versus who we decide to start. But when you get to four people and four quality players, I wouldn't trade our guys for anybody in the country.
All right. There's light at the end of the tunnel, Matt. One question each left from us. But you look at Brandon Newman with an interesting story last year, and certainly had to be those of us that have no idea what both of you had to go through in terms of a guy that played so much, then didn't get to play, then came in and contributed a key time last year, late in the season. Talk about that evolution with him and how that's helped him develop, and maybe even you develop as a coach, having that type of an experience.
Yeah, well, when you get to where we got 2 years ago, and then he got taken out of the lineup and he really struggled playing that role, and then knowing that, with Sasha and Jaden, that he's going to go back and come off the bench there. Now you got to play that role again. So a lot of the things, the mindset for a person starting and playing 30 games versus someone coming off the bench, they're going to play 12 to 20 minutes, is different. And you have to be able to do the things necessary to help your team win there. He just wasn't very good in that role at all. And it was something we talked about, something we worked on, and we made very little strides in that area. So it made more sense to play those starters more, give Ethan Morton more minutes, and then go from 10 to 9 in our rotation right there. And then at the end of the year, he kept working, he kept playing, he kept putting in time. Brandon's always the guy that shoots extra, watches extra film. And, he was ready to go. He really helped us win, that game against Penn State. So, yeah. But the reason he didn't play wasn't, because, it was just Jaden Ivey and Sasha Stefanovic, and that was that. He really struggled in that role. And so, he has to learn to play to his strengths. He has to learn to do the things necessary to help our team win. He has been able to do that at times in his career, but he hasn't consistently done that unless he was playing 30 minutes. Well, he's got to put himself in a position where that makes sense for us to do that. So just getting him to play to his strengths, be a defender, be a rebounder, be a guy that can really move offensively, take 3-point shots, take as many 3-point shots that are good looks and rhythm as possible, and just be simple when it comes to handling the basketball and passing the basketball. And that's going to be the telltale for him. If he can do the things I said there necessary and play to his strengths, he's going to have a good year. And if he doesn't, then he'll push towards the role that he had this past year. I know that's something that he doesn't want, but it's all in your production and it's all in your performance. So I'm very, very clear to guys about certain things once it kind of becomes, okay, this is who you are and this is where you are. And so I don't talk in tongues at that point. I make it clear as this is what we need from you. And if you are trying to do those things and you're struggling, I have compassion for that, and I stick with it. If you're not trying to do things, I have very little compassion for that. I think that's the Joe Tiller school of coaching right there. But it's true, because what happens is, I love Brandon Newman and I want him to be so successful. But as a coach, I can't get that feeling, and that can't supersede what's best for the team. I always got to stick what's best for the team. And sometimes you got to draw hard lines. So where he ends up this year, I think he'll have a really good year. But if he doesn't play to his strengths, it could go the other way. If he plays to his strengths, he could have a fabulous. So he has the ability to be an all-conference player if he plays to his strengths. But if he doesn't, then he kind of goes back into that role he was in some capacity. And that hasn't been good in either one of the years. So I know I kind of got a mission statement there, but I think it's important, to be as frank and honest and straightforward with guys. Once they get to that third, fourth year, and that's kind of where you are, because now being very, very honest and blunt about things is the best medicine. And that's really what's going to help them and have the best chance to have the year that they really want.
All right, Brian, last question. Ask him an honest and blunt one, please.
I'd imagine one of the things that can be a real stressor for coaches is youth at guard, and you're going to have a lot of it this year with
Yes.
Braden and Fletcher. Why aren't you worried about those guys? What have they shown you that I guess puts your mind at ease about that?
Well, I wouldn't say anything's at ease. They're good players, first of all. No matter if somebody is like a quality player or not, as a coach, you have concerns just, from the people that you play, to the season and how long things are and how they adjust to things. But you're also, out there performing and, being productive. And the guys that are the most productive, are the guys that are going to play. And the guys that are trying to do what you ask them to do, more times than not are the guys that are going to play. Sometimes you'll get a guy, sometimes it's more productive that maybe doesn't put in as much work off the court. We got a group of guys that put a lot of time in across the board. And, Fletch is, very competitive, can handle the ball, can make plays off the bounce, can shoot a pull up, can shoot threes, can move. Braden is a quintessential point, got a level of toughness to him, very competitive. He can score the basketball. We got to get him to score the basketball. He has shot the ball pretty well here of late, probably the first week or so that we got rolling. Like, he wasn't looking to shoot much, but he's a very good shooter. And he's a guy that can make plays for himself and also make plays, for his teammates. And I think they're both going to be great players here. But there's going to be bumps. There's bumps in everybody's career, and you just got to be there for them and try to help them along on both ends of the court.
Matt, thanks so much for your time. Always insightful, and we could go on for hours, and we'd like to, but you got other things to do, and we appreciate that. We'll be back for segment 2. Tiffany Grimes, someone that Matt Painter's gotten to know a little bit as well, will be our guest in the second segment, Purdue's new Deputy Athletic Director. Matt, thanks again. Good luck this season, and we'll be back in 2 minutes on Gold and Black Live.